Hello, everybody, and happy Thursday. For those of you that are new, welcome. And for those of you that are returning, welcome back to the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, episode number 16. It's called Expensive Safety. My name is Bill, and on today's show, we are talking about Boeing, some gaming updates, and some automotive updates as well, having to do with some Tesla troubles. We're going to learn some industry terms with jargon in a jiffy, help you build a pathway to success with Career Corner, live listener Q&A, and our discussion this week, safety versus cost. Is it an inverse relationship? My co-host is fellow co-founder of the Three Green Simulations Group, retired NYC EMT and flight sim extraordinaire Tommy D of Level Flight Simulations. Tommy, you there?
I am here. I do not know why my camera's not picking up.
Solid intro. If you go to settings, like the
Yep.
settings cogwheel on your screen, and then select the camera, make sure it's not being used by anything else. Oh,
No,
well,
it's being used by well, it's not showing up on TikTok neither.
I would say make sure it's deactivated on the TikTok side.
No. This is typical.
Well, with that being said, a lot has happened. While you're doing that, Tommy, I'll continue talking here to get the show moving here. But welcome back, everybody. It's been, sorry, I kind of drew a blank there. It's been a little over a month since we have talked last, because a lot of things have happened. If you remember the last podcast we talked about, I moved into my new house. Then shortly after, went on a cruise vacation, and a couple weeks later, this last week, had my parents come up and we watched the eclipse together. So it's been kind of a whirlwind setup, and as you can see, I got everybody set up. Got Schultz in the background. Hangar 26 2.0, I guess we're calling it 2.0, is set up in my new office, and got back streaming on Twitch. And now we're back to doing live podcasts, which is absolutely amazing. Today, Tommy and I, while setting up, I got the notification from Twitch that I am now a Twitch affiliate, which is awesome. It's something that Tommy and I have been working forward towards too. Tommy's still working on that, so definitely go check him out on Twitch, Level Flight Simulations. Give him a follow so you can go watch while he goes live. He's really close. We're just trying to get him to affiliate as well. And let's
Uh,
see. There's Tommy.
there we go.
Hey, it works. How you
Accept
doing,
her.
Tommy?
Good, good. How you been?
It's busy. I mean, as you know, busy, busy, busy. What about yourself?
Yeah, about the same. Work, school, uh, grandparenting, busy, busy,
Yeah,
but a good busy.
it's been a solid. I would say I've been the most tired I've been in the past couple weeks in my entire life, if that makes sense. I've been really tired, but it's a good tired. It's like we've consistently done something productive each week. Like Tommy, and when I was texting Tommy, I was always doing a project with the house because just trying to get it set up. So it's been a little bit, but we're back. Torque and Thrust, episode 16. I just realized that 15, for whatever reason, never posted on Spotify or any of our listening platforms, so I will figure that out, why that's not out there. But if I can't figure it out, then you'll see episode 14, 16 or 15 will be a mystery, and 16 will be posted shortly or later this week sometime. And I really hope 15 didn't disappear, because 15 was our Flat Earther one. So that was a good episode. So I got to go dig and find where I left that and where I edited it. So, but without further ado, we're gonna get started off today with some aviation news. Let me click the thing here, and then we'll come back with a gaming update for Tommy. So this week, the first thing that we're starting off with is, as per the usual, is going to be a this week in aviation history. So for those of you that are maybe new to the stream or not familiar with the stream, or with the podcast, is I talk about history. I'm a huge history buff, and I love history, especially when it comes to aviation. So each week when we do this podcast, we talk about what happened this week that was significant in aviation history. And it's kind of ironic. It's a big deal to me because I fly the Boeing 737, but with all the Boeing stuff in the news, it also kind of fits the episode. But this week in aviation, on April 9th, 1967, that's 57 years ago, the Boeing 737-100, the classic, took its first flight. And the rest is history. It's the longest workhorse or longest airline air transport category airplane, that has been in service. If you consider everything else, the 727 was like the late 70s, early 80s. The 75 was the 80s, but the 737 in terms of airliners in the United States have been the longest in service. Not to say that every single 737 is 57 years old, because obviously that's not true. There's new ones coming off the manufacturer line, but the type of aircraft has been around since 1967. Now, for more modern news, as we kind of take in here, kind of going along the same line, I'm not really going to jump into it. There's been so much news regarding Boeing since we took our little hiatus when I was moving to my new house and setting up this office since we've done the last podcast. We kind of talked about Boeing and its woes back in February. But realistically, the last thing that I believe we talked about was the Alaska 737 MAX 9 that lost its door, right? I think that's the one that's been the one that most recently we talked about. But since then, since we kind of took a break from the podcast while I was moving houses, a lot has happened. A ton of stuff has happened. And some of it you could chalk up to be like, well, it's just bad luck. But a lot of it is Boeing. And I'll bring Tommy in after this segment so we can discuss a little bit about it. But Boeing, a lot of things are coming up about Boeing that we'll talk about. Another big piece of news that I'm not really going to talk about because there's so much to talk about, but a couple days ago, Spirit Airlines announced that it's going to be furloughing 260 pilots, and that number may have gone up recently, but that's from the article I saw a couple days ago. Furloughs in this market is unbelievable, and Tommy and I talked about it. I believe it was in episode 14 about the merger. It's that merger that got blocked by the Department of Justice is now causing continued financial troubles at Spirit, which is leading to pilot furloughs, which sucks. If you're a pilot, you know what I mean. It's you're being told that you can't fly and you're gone without pay. It sucks. It's an involuntary, basically, layoff. So hopefully that's something. Somebody will swoop in at the 11th hour and save Spirit Airlines or pick them up. But DOJ and the federal government, that's on you for not allowing them to be absorbed by JetBlue and absorb the cost. So hopefully the government does something to assist the pilots as they're transitioning. But what we're talking about today is from CNN.com. Once again, it's Boeing, right? And also, I'm sorry, Boeing 737 in Denver this last week lost a cowling upon takeoff. You really can't make this up. I don't know if it's a string of bad luck or if it's an increase in public media or social media and public media attention of what's going on, but it's been a lot. But this is from CNN.com. Boeing somehow managed to get itself into even bigger trouble. So if you've been following the news this last week, they call him a whistleblower. I feel like whistleblower is kind of has a bad connotation to it, but that's what they're calling it, is whistleblower. It's someone who stepped forward and said that they believe that there was something wrong with the Boeing 787. They were talking about that some of the panels that they were trying to attach to the airplane, people were jumping on to align the holes because they weren't cut or formed correctly. And this whistleblower, the person that has come forward to the media and stuff about that, has mentioned that the 787 and the 777, and I quote, could possibly fall apart mid-flight. So Boeing itself strongly denies the claims and says it's confident in the safety of the aircraft. Still, the United States Federal Aviation Administration said it would investigate. They have to. It's someone comes up and says, there's an error in manufacturing process and this could possibly happen. The FAA has an obligation to protect the traveling public, so they have to investigate as soon as the whistleblower said it. So adding to a growing list of federal probes into the beleaguered company, including a criminal investigation, and next week a Senate subcommittee will hear testimony about the whistleblower's case and will presumably air more of Boeing's dirty laundry in public. More allegations of lax safety standards are the last thing the company and the flying public need right now. The whistleblower complaint is doing further damage to Boeing already battered public image, a company with a broken safety record led by a highly paid executive who is careless about quality standards. Yet the bad news for Boeing apparently knows no end. It's true. It's just Boeing has been all over the news recently. So the whistleblower is Sam Salapore, who's an engineer, and it said that Boeing took shortcuts when manufacturing its 777s and 787s, skipping crucial safety steps which could lead to a catastrophic failure of the airplanes as they age. The shortcuts could dramatically reduce the airplane's expected lifespan of up to 50 years in service. That's a lot because airplanes last a lot. The New York Times was actually the first to report the whistleblower's claims, and the Sam Salafor's formal complaint to the FAA, filed in January and made public Tuesday, was not entirely new. The FAA had already been investigating Boeing over 787 production concerns and halted 787 deliveries. But Salpor's complaint shed new light on how crews assembling the 787 Dreamliner apparently failed to properly fill tiny gaps when joining separately manufactured parts for the fuselage for 1,000 planes. That's a lot. That could add stress to all the plane's joints and something that could be hard to identify in inspections, the whistleblower said. He alleged that Boeing knew about the process errors and what's more, encouraged them in order to reduce 787 assembly bottlenecks. Boeing said that the 787 is safe to fly, and before halting deliveries of the model, the FAA rigorously scrutinized Boeing manufacturing process that Salpor questioned. If ultimately approved, the planes for shipments to airlines in March of 23, and after becoming satisfied that Boeing has fixed the problem. Now, these claims about the structural integrity of the 787 are inaccurate and do not represent the comprehensive work that Boeing has done to ensure the quality and long-term safety of the aircraft. That's what Boeing is saying. Once again, just not good news, unfortunately, with Boeing. Like I said, I'll bring in Tommy here in a couple, probably about a minute or so we can talk about this, because the unique thing is I take it from a pilot's perspective, as someone who flies the airplane and a Boeing, and Tommy has a very unique perspective as a someone who is part of the traveling public, and that's why I like bringing him in on a lot of these things. So we'll just give him a second to get back here, because I don't see him on. There he is, and we'll bring him back on here. So Tommy, from the traveling public point of view, from someone who's a sim enthusiast but not necessarily a pilot, what's your take on this whole Boeing thing? Do you think it's just bad luck that these things are just kind of happening, or is it more so that someone's finally calling out Boeing for lax practices? Is it a legitimate concern?
I think that's part of it. I think the lax practice call out does have some part of it too, but there are other things that they don't really delve too deep into. One of the things I also want to know is like Boeing, big major company, traded on the stock market, probably Fortune 100 at a guess. How much of their work is actually outsourced?
Yeah, that's true. There actually is a lot, because one of them is the manufacturer. Is it Airbus or Spirit? It's Spirit something, or not the airline, but it's Spirit Manufacturing. Does a lot of third party. I don't know if it's fabrication of parts, but they do a lot of work for Boeing, and that's a lot of the issues that they have seen. Like, there was one where there was like these random holes that were drilled into a pressure bulkhead that shouldn't have been there, and that was because of a third party manufacturing error, not Boeing. Because what happens, they send
Right.
all these things to the plant, and then it gets assembled in the plant, and
Right.
that's where they're
So,
finding all the errors.
does some of these defects start not with Boeing? Are they coming from beyond Boeing's control? Now, I'm sure Boeing has quality assurance as product comes into the warehouse to go to the assembly line. Like, specifically, we'll just stick with the 737s for now. But when it gets to the plant, I'm sure they do have people, metallurgists and engineers and stuff like that that are going to go through it. Because just think of like one specific part, right? Say they don't. I don't know if they do or don't fabricate their own jack screws, right? And for
Right.
those of
Yeah.
you
Hmm.
who don't know what a jack screw is, Bill can give you a 30-second dissertation on that one. But, before it is installed on the aircraft frame that they're currently working on, I'm sure someone's going to go through it. So human error is a part of it, lacks quality assurance. A good portion could stand with third party. We don't know because that's not in any of the reports yet. And I'm sure when the NTSB comes back with some of the reports over some of the events that have happened in the past 4 months, there might be
Hmm.
something. But let's face it, an NTSB report is not an easy read, because once that goes public
No.
information, you're going to spend a couple of days reading that report. That's a couple thousand pages worth of reporting,
Yeah.
and then it's their recommendation.
Hmm. Well,
So as a traveling public, if I'm flying out now, I have to drive down to Lehigh to get on a 7-3. Now,
mhm,
my local only has
the regional
CRJs,
RJs.
170s, and A320s. I'll
Hmm.
still get on a 7-3. Because if you look at all the 7-3s in the air now, compared to what's going on, and we could even expand it to January.
Hmm.
That's a very small percentage of 7.3s
Yeah.
comparatively to the flying fleet across just U.S. based carriers.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, and that's what I explain to people too, is because I as a Boeing pilot, I get that a lot with people asking if it's safe. Next generation NGs are safe. Um, a lot of the maintenance issues that we are having, or the eight airworthiness directives and stuff, are the Max aircraft, which are the newly manufactured post pandemic, you know, manufacturing. And we will talk about that. Is the discussion topic. That's why this episode is called "Expensive Safety?" Question mark. Is Tom and I are going to be discussing that towards the end of the episode, whether or not cost and safety has always been, or even is still, an inverse relationship, which means that it costs, if you want to be safe, it costs more, and so on and so forth. We'll get that to the end. It's a very interesting discussion topic because people always assume that to be more safe, you have to spend more money, or vice versa. So, or that cutting costs is as well. But I think what we're seeing is, like Tommy was talking about, is there's a lot of outsourcing of manufacturing for the Boeing, and we're seeing a lot of quality issues. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. I don't want to dive too into it right now. Um, but yeah, so Boeing's all over the place, and it was United for the longest time, was in the news. Now it's Southwest because they just lost a cowling cover in Denver, in Denver International Airport the other day. So I think we're going to be talking about Boeing for next couple episodes. But with that being said, something a little bit lighter news. Tommy is going to be giving us a gaming update, right, Tommy?
I actually have something a little bit different. I do have a very quick gaming update. That's going to be 45 seconds. That's PMDG, and something that I'm starting to see trend in the Microsoft Flight Sim and X-Plane community. And
Okay.
then I'm going to give my opinion on an aircraft that I have that was recommended by our friend Autopilot.
Okay. Well, take it away.
So, good morning, everyone. How you doing? If I stutter, please excuse me. I haven't slept yet. So, real quick, PMDG, right? Everybody in the flight sim community, we've been waiting for this 777 since Rapture, and uh, my opinion now is good. I will wait for the aircraft to come out. If I got to wait another couple months, so be it. My money's been saved for 2 months now to grab this aircraft. One of the things that I'm starting to see trending now, and this is initially started with the 170, 175s. Um, the developers are actually rushing to production. So it's going from engineering to the developer screen out to us in the flight sim community as incomplete study level aircraft. Well, that's kind of like jumbo shrimp. An incomplete study level aircraft is not study level. So when Bill and I do the shared flight decks in the 788, or you see me in the 737 or my A320, those are study level aircraft because of the immersion. The the more immersed you are in the aircraft, the higher degree of study level that it's considered. So I may not be a Boeing pilot, but if you throw me in the flight deck, I'll know where the switches are and I'll know what a good portion of them does. I'll at least get the ground power going without problem. But and that's why I am a fan of the PMDG Boeing products because of that level of immersion. What I'm not a fan of is now it's starting to become a money wagon. They're charging anywhere from 25 to $69 per aircraft because you actually purchased that aircraft license, and they're rushing it. The developers are rushing it to get their piece of that developmental pie in the flight sim community because although it's very popular in the United States, when you go over to Europe, Microsoft Flight Simulator is no joke. I'll be flying in Europe under their ATC. Listen to the way they talk as opposed to the VATSIM controllers in the United States. It is a drastic difference. And if you don't know what you're doing as far as reading your charts, reporting position, and all that stuff, when you're on VATSIM in Europe, they bump you from the server without even blinking an eye. But with that being said, real quick, and this is going to take about 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, the FS Reborn Piper M500 or the Meridian. This was an aircraft that Autopilot, that a lot of you guys are familiar with, has recommended to me about 5 weeks ago. He actually coined it the PMDG of the general aviation community. And let me tell you, he is not wrong. That M500 is such a joy to fly in the sim, to program. It comes with the G1000, which is still escaping me a little bit, but that's okay. We'll deal with that. I'll learn it as I go. But as far as actually flying that aircraft in the sim, getting it to different waypoints, it it's amazing. The responsiveness on it, the design itself is almost perfect. The last I don't even think it's been updated yet. That's how ready for market this plane was for the simulator. I don't know if they crossed over to X-Plane 12 or 11 yet, but if it does and you're a general aviation fan, I'm giving this 7 thumbs up. It is a spectacular general aviation, and it's dual purpose. Like, when I fly my little 152, that's really only VFR, right? But when I'm in that M500, I could go VFR to IFR, back to VFR. I could flip flop, do whatever you want with it, redo waypoints. The immersion level in that glass flight deck is amazing. It totally integrates with the Alpha and Bravo throttle quadrants that I have from Honeycomb now, and they don't pay me to say that, but they should, but they don't. And I can't go on and on. Like, Bill and I will be sitting here for a week if I continue on about this aircraft, but it is a lot of fun. It's a well put together model. I thoroughly recommend it. You get in there. One of the big keys is you have passengers that are always whining, so you got to keep them happy with coffee, food, and your climate control. And there is real world wear and tear on the aircraft, to the point where, when you get to 100 hours, you got to do the maintenance on it. You got to, when you're pre-flighting, you're checking the oil levels and stuff like that. And the flight tablet actually tells you all that. And on the flight tablet, it's 100% immersion, and it matches up perfectly with Navigraph. So if you have a Navigraph and SimBrief subscription, it goes right into that aircraft without a problem. But that being said, uh, if you have the means and you want a nice payware, study level general aviation aircraft, I fully recommend that FS Reborn M500. So I think I might even get Bill back in on this and see if I could get him to sit in a GA plane, which I don't think that's happened since his days in Florida.
No, it hasn't. I was actually talking to our moderator, Lando, who, by the way, is starting up Virtual Breeze Airways for Microsoft
That's
Flight Simulator. I'm gonna plug that because I'm definitely joining that once he gets it set up, and may actually return with some Microsoft Flight Simulator streaming with Tommy. We'll see. We'll see. Because
I
everybody
too
knows
will be getting my type rating for Breeze Virtual.
Fabrice, yeah, I
Yes.
was gonna say everybody knows. The only reason I streamed and did stuff is because it's fun to do it with Tommy on shared flight deck, and it was fun to answer your all's questions. But flying the 737 after flying the 737 for work is, but being able to fly something like 190 or A220, oh, that's gonna be cool. Hopefully, we can also do shared flight deck because then Tommy and I can do flights together with virtual breeds. But anyways, but yeah, so Lando's in the chat. Just wanted to shout out with Lando, but. I was talking to him about this yesterday during one of my streams on Twitch yesterday, doing train sim, about how much fun it was to fly GA. Do you remember when we did the fly around or the bush flying in South America with
That
our
was
viewers?
such a blast.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So doing GA stuff is I don't mind doing GA because I don't do it every single day. So if we're in a GA airplane, I'm excited for it. But also I wanted to point out, it's kind of says because I have a little piece we kind of talked about the gaming news too. But you were talking about how it shows like wear and tear and stuff
Mhm.
on the airplane. Remember an air truck simulator? And American Truck Simulator, they started doing that with one of the most recent updates where now it's not like you can just go repair everything. If you have to do an engine overhaul, it's 15 grand. Like they're really taking into account, they're making it more realistic with wear and tear. And it sounds like that's kind of what Microsoft Flight Simulator is going through too, is adding a
Mhm.
little realism in there by making you take care of your airplane as well. Now, is
Yep.
that something that you think that we'll see as a standard feature for model aircraft in Microsoft Flight Sim 2024? Or
I
do you think
do.
that's just an add-on
I
thing?
do. I don't think the developers like Bluebird of that 7.5,
Hmm.
PMDG, the bigger airliner
Yeah.
developers, I don't think they're going to have that level of immersion. But I
Okay.
think a lot of people are going to follow FS Reborn. with that as far as like maintaining your aircraft. And I found
Yeah.
out actually something interesting yesterday during my live on Twitch and TikTok from Otto. The FS Reborn is
Hmm.
basically like a dude. Like he does everything. He does the designing, the modeling, the texturing, the painting, all that stuff.
Oh, wow.
So
One.
like there might be a small
Wow.
development team, but it's
Hmm.
still a mama and papa putting out a product like that.
Hmm.
I am going to be watching FS Reborn very, very closely for their future projects.
Okay, good. Well, and I know I touched on it. It'll be a very brief because it was a brief update from American Truck Simulator for gaming news. American Truck Simulator just released an experimental beta for their next version. They're calling it an experimental beta from SES software just because there's some performance issues with it. But what I love about SES development, which is who makes American Truck Simulator, is they're centralized around feedback from their actual players. Where it's not like Call of Duty, where it's like we're going to tell you what you want and what you like. So it's out there. You can sign up to use it. They tell you, hey, there's going to be performance issues because it is an experimental beta, but we want to get your all's feedback. Some things that they highlighted is better aliasing, so smoother shadows because right now the shadows are kind of choppy, square edges. They're trying new AI aliasing to help smooth out graphics, especially between light and shadow areas as well, and certain things like lens flares and adding particle animation, so like dust and stuff when we're going on dirt roads. And the biggest thing is they're improving the GPS and user interface, which is pretty good now, but they're making it more controller friendly, so that way you don't have to do as much with keyboard and mouse. So they're kind of gearing it more towards controller players because either you're using a steering wheel or you're using a controller. I think very rarely, or there's a small amount of people that actually use keyboard and mouse for American Truck Simulator. So that's what I'm talking about with the centralized feedback. They're all focusing on the feedback from their actual players, which I think is amazing. Once again, SES development, we love you. We love American Truck Simulator. Can't wait to see what's coming out. What's coming up now? Missouri,
Missouri,
Arkansas, and Nebraska. Missouri's the next
I
one, but
believe that's it. Yeah, because they always release
yeah,
it in blocks of three.
yep. So that's those are the next three that are coming out. There's not a set date yet, but they should be coming out here pretty shortly. We're excited for that to add another couple states as well. Well, thanks, Tommy, for the gaming update. I will take it over now, and we'll do a little bit of a automotive update for the motorheads out there. Um, Today we're going to be talking about, if there it goes, about Tesla. Tesla has been having some trouble, unfortunately. This is from Motor Trend. The article is Tesla is in big trouble, and signs point to yes by Angus McKinsey. Angus McKinsey. I don't know if I read the author right. But on April 5th, which was just about a week ago, Reuters, which is another known reporting source for automotive news, agency that Elon Musk had said that Elon Musk had canceled the long-awaited low-cost Tesla small car, which was the promise to make a smaller, more compact electric car that was under 25,000. So when Tesla first came out, what made them so popular with Elon Musk is that the car was reasonably priced, right? Which made it attainable. And I've talked about it in previous episodes with Tommy. The thing that frustrates me the most about EVs nowadays is EVs are essential to help preserve our environment, reduce our carbon footprint, but they're unattainable to the average person in the world. For example, the F-150 Lightning is like 90 grand. That's the high-end model. Middle grand's like 60 to 70, when an average gas truck is about 50 to 60,000 off the lot. So my big thing is attainability. It's one thing to have a electric vehicle to save the universe, but if not everybody can drive it, why produce it? So Tesla was promising a Model Q, or Model 2 is what they were calling it, which was a $25,000 subcompact electric car. Making so, and I think originally they were going to release it for like robotaxi operations as well, but on April 5th they canceled it. And it was interesting because Elon Musk like went out on X or Twitter and said, nope, that's not accurate, and that Reuters basically was lying, but they had in fact, someone inside the company had said they had canceled that operation. Let me see, there was a stat in here. But basically, it worries us because the market is shifting because of more affordable EVs are coming out other than Tesla. I think that's the biggest thing is that I think it's down by like 8%. Tesla's projected performance for the first quarter is not good of this year, largely because they're failing to have a car that is more affordable to the traveling public, while other companies like Nissan Leaf and stuff like that, there are very affordable electric cars available with similar technology. Not to mention in terms of modernizing or advancing Tesla's current cars, this article notes that Tesla's model range, not only model range but the range itself, isn't really increasing as like its competitors. So that's also another thing. So it's basically they're saying is becoming old news. Things like the Cybertruck were like a one-hit wonder. Not everybody drives a Wonder Truck, Wonder Truck, Cybertruck. It's no longer a premium brand. There's other companies out there that are considered higher luxury, I guess, that are also making electric cars as well. So Tesla used to be the big bad car manufacturer for electric cars, and it's just not. Doesn't look like they're going to be the strongest or the I guess the what's the problem the top of the pack for that here in the future. So it's interesting because Tesla's always been such a strong competitor in that market that they're starting to lose that because of the fact that they're failing to not be able to produce a smaller compact vehicle that is more affordable. And I say more affordable to Americans, just to everybody, because to drive a $90,000 car, it's not everybody can get it. And the whole point is to help reduce your carbon footprint. And once again, ironically, to charge your vehicle, and I'll bring Tommy in on this, I was just having this discussion with my dad the other day. Ironically, to charge your electric vehicle means that if you have a coal burning electric plant nearby, it's burning more coal to charge your car. So it's one of those things. Now, if you're on a solar grid or you have solar power and you're using that to charge your car, then that's truly green energy. But otherwise, you're just displacing your carbon footprint. Have you heard that? Have you heard that discussion, Tommy?
I have. I have. Now, oddly enough, the better half and I back at the end of January, we went to the Pennsylvania State Car Show down
Mm-hmm.
not far from where we ate lunch, about 5 minutes away from there at the convention center.
Uh-huh.
And everybody had an electric vehicle. Everybody.
Everybody?
Everybody had their electric vehicles. Now, one of them was out of control. It was a Kia's EV SUV that for eighty-six
Oh,
thousand dollars.
was that the Icon? The
Yeah,
Iconic? We talked
yeah,
about that a
in
couple episodes ago.
this ridiculous purplish looking color. It was like one of those like if you look at the sun on this side, it's purple, but this side is blue. But like one of
Oh,
those reflective
pearlescent.
paint job. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Musk definitely did pioneer the system,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it might have got a little bit bigger of an ego,
Yeah. I
and
mean, I mean, ego is part of it. It plays into it, but I think it's just the lack of advancement to make it more affordable. Like when you see
right,
something that expensive, you expect, okay, in a couple years, maybe they'll come out with a model that's a little more affordable for my bracket, and it's not.
right.
You
And
know,
then
so it's just.
what we did see at the car show was they're affordable, but you're doing overtime. Like the EV from Ford, they have a 250 EV,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
eight bed, 8 foot bed, I believe it is.
Yep.
Good
Mm-hmm.
looking truck. It really was a good looking truck, and those seats kind of like hugged me when I jumped into it because you're at a car show, you're sitting in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was like 77, but that was soup to nuts loaded.
Yeah.
Like that was the pinnacle of that vehicle that they had on showcase.
Well,
Nissan
and
had
to
one, and
well, and to
but
put that in perspective, a Model X, I think it starts out at 75 or 80,
yeah, somewhere
and
around
that's
there.
base, So,
Yep.
yeah.
But one
So,
of the interesting things is they all the manufacturers, including Tesla, Ford, Nissan, Mercedes, everyone that's producing EVs now, they actually have to agree, and there's a big agreement that's being currently worked on
mhm.
about the chargers.
Oh, yeah. I
The
mean,
actual connection that publicly will go in your car. Like I know right here by my house, I have Sheets. They have
mhm.
7 Tesla charging stations.
Yeah.
but they're trying to work on the agreement now to where it could, if I have the Chevy, is it the Volt? The Volt, the Chevy Volt is the
Chevy
EV.
Volts, yeah, is their EV.
That my vehicle would be compatible with a Tesla charger. So I haven't heard or seen an article that deal has been stricken yet, but that's something that also with the evolution of EVs is going to need to be that, to keep that standardized. So he's going to make a mint off of that alone.
Yeah, but then again, it comes down to is it because right now you'd have to pay to use an EV charger. If
Hmm.
other car manufacturers start saying, "Hey, we're going to start putting up like Nissan or Toyota," and if or you're part of this program, or even third party, like if we wanted to create 3 green charging stations, right, and then just charge undercut everybody else, then he's not going to have really a product to stand on. So there is limit to it because chargers, I think Tesla's chargers are pretty not expensive, but comparatively expensive, and the only reason people use them now is because of the fact that they have the biggest infrastructure. So
Right.
it'll be interesting. It's something we'll keep an eye on. EVs are the future.
Hmm.
We're trying to see, and even I mean, the federal government and EPA have had a directive to move everything towards EV. That's why the car manufacturers are doing it right now. So it's just interesting to see what it's going to look like in a couple years to see if everybody's driving an EV or because like I know my next one is going to be a truck. It ain't going to be a Lightning because they're too expensive and not worth the cost. But so we'll see where that goes. But with that, that'll transition us to our favorite segment, which is going to be Jargon in a Jiffy. For those of you that aren't familiar with Jargon in a Jiffy, or this is your first time on the show, Jargon in a Jiffy is where Tommy and I is a word game that we take a term from our industry, from our career, and we say it, use it in a sentence, and it's up to the other host to guess what it is. And this is just to basically to take our terminology that we use day to day that sounds intimidating to people who are maybe not in our career and make it simple and a little less scary. So, without further ado, Tommy D, take it away. Let's see. You get to do it first.
Oh, okay, cool. So my word is pads. Very, very simple. Pads. And here's the sentence for it. Reach into the you're gonna get this, no doubt.
Okay.
But reach into the monitor. I need the pads for this guy.
The pads. Is it gauze?
No.
Is it the same thing as gauze? It's not
Nope. I'll
like a.
repeat it.
Yeah, go for it.
Grab the pads out of the monitor. I need them for this guy.
Oh, AED
Yeah.
pads.
Defibrillation
Yeah,
pads. Yep.
defibrillation. Now, I've always had a question about this because in the airplane, we don't know how to use the AED. That's 100% flight attendants, and that's why I always tell people because I actually this last week a lady was talking about it. She was flying on JetBlue in Boston. They had I think it was a cancellation, so she was upset. And the crew timed out. And she's like, "Well, I can do that. I can just point at exits." And I was like, "Ma'am, they do way more than that." And she just kind of stopped. I don't like it when people belittle flight attendants. That all they do is serve drink. No, they do way more. Like any sort of medical training, that's them, not us. We have no idea how to use the AED. We have no idea how to use the first aid kit. We know where it's at and like how it's supposed to be sealed and how to write it up if it's been opened and stuff. But all that's the flight attendants. But we have my question. Sorry, that was kind of a tangent for you, Tommy. Is we have a automatic AED. So you put it on the person and it'll tell you everything and it'll tell you if it recommends a shock and how to do it and all that sort of stuff. In ambulances, when you're an EMT, is it something similar? Do they put those AEDs or it's a little more advanced where it's kind of like the big boy AED?
Well, it's both, and it's actually service based.
Okay.
The current protocol in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, we have had fully automatic AEDs for over a
Mm-hmm.
decade. Okay,
Okay.
well, they'll interpret the rhythm, and there's only one rhythm that it interprets that they're going to shock, and the coin term is VFib, but it's ventricular fibrillation. It's where your ventricles are not pumping; they're just kind of doing this. You know,
Oh, yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
the electrical impulse is disturbed, so they
Yeah.
just kind of
Mm-hmm.
flutter around. And I don't want to use flutter because that is a different heart rhythm all
Yeah,
in and of itself.
I would say that's something else, isn't
Yeah,
it?
they're just kind of like it's what's considered an unaliving rhythm. So
Ah,
the
okay.
idea of the defibrillation is to whack a minimum of 10,000 volts through the musculature of the heart and
Okay.
kind of like a wake up call, you know, like, yo,
Yeah.
get this straight.
Get back into
Um,
rhythm.
the last service that I retired from, I had a full blown out monitor to where I could do 12 leads and I could control the shock, and that's a semi automatic defibrillator. So
Okay.
I had automatic or semi automatic. Trucks that I was on when I was doing overtime was always set to semi. So it was my
Okay. So
finger on the
just
button.
okay. So it just
So
okay because you guys have more training, so they give you a little more leeway with
yeah,
utilizing
because
the
I
equipment.
know what rhythms I'm looking for. Also, the monitor with the technology that they have now, they wonder why these monitors cost 50, $60,000. The technology that goes into them nowadays,
Yeah.
if I mistakenly read the rhythm and I try shocking a non-shockable rhythm,
Yeah.
it won't even charge up. And
Okay.
yes, it does give you that noise, that boo,
Yeah.
and then it
Okay.
beeps.
Well, that's good to
But
know. Yeah, I was always curious about that because on the airplanes they're all automatic. It's to reduce liability, basically, because we're the flight attendants are trained on how to use them, but they're not certified EMTs
yep,
or doctors or
and
anything like that.
hopefully that
So,
the only problem that I've ever had with the fully automatic
hmm
is if someone's not paying attention when that because they talk to you. They tell you how to
yep,
put the pads on and all that stuff.
yep,
If someone's not paying attention and God forbid it happens, but if they're defibrillating someone in the middle of the aisle while you're doing an emergency descent and divert,
hmm
um, God forbid someone's touching that patient because humans are electrically conductible. We
yeah. I
do
mean, that's
conduct
why we get
electricity.
electrocuted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I've
that's what
known
we.
people that happened to, and it wasn't a happy story.
Not I bet it wasn't.
It
Speaking
was
of
not a
happy
happy story.
stories, speaking of happy stories, you ready for my word?
I am.
You'll like this one. I don't know if you'll get this one. It's I'm not trying to be offensive. My word for jargon in a jiffy is boomer. Boomer, just like it sounds. The sentence is we have to be very careful in the summer going over mountainous terrains. Mountainous terrain, a lot of times we'll have to deviate around boomers.
Thunderstorms.
Yep, there you go. I didn't know if you were gonna get that or not. So it's not really a like a official term, but it's one of the things that we do call thunderstorms. A lot of times it's T storms or pop ups. You'll hear pop ups a lot too. We like to go right, 5 degrees for pop ups. Pop ups entail more that the storms aren't shown on radar or weren't forecasted, but like boomers means the very big, very tall thunderstorms with the huge anvil and they're billowing at the top. We're talking like 70,000 foot storms, and the reason we call them boomers is because of the
Hmm.
thunder boomers. So, yeah, okay. Well, dang, I was a little rusty, I guess, from my hiatus here. I
Well,
gotta
you know what it is
be.
too. Just kind of like ease ourselves back into jargon in a jiffy after like a 6 week hiatus.
Oh my god. Well, the last let's see. I want to say the last couple episodes we were drilling each other on jargon and Jiffy. We had some of the hardest words and terms before we went on hiatus. So it's nice to kind of ease back in, but we gotta turn it up a little bit. That was a little too easy for the both of us. But
Oh yeah, we'll
um
definitely be ratcheting this up next week.
yeah, I would say that's okay. That was a kind of a good thing. Okay, we're still good, and next week we'll turn it back on full
Right.
heat.
And what everyone like to all of our new friends and viewers, Bill and I by default are very competitive. So it's
Yes.
not that we go out to, we don't target one another, but we really do put a good effort in to stump one another.
Yeah, because that's how we learn. The whole point is I want to educate Tommy on something that he may not have known about, like an aviation term, and vice versa. We want to learn. So, but I mean, so Boomer and Pad were the two for today. We both got them both. So now we're gonna move on to jargon in. I'm sorry. Career. I love jargon in Jiffy. I just don't want to move off of it. No. Now we're going to talk about career corner. Now, Tommy and I were talking about this pre-show while we were setting up. Jargon or career corner is going to be coming to an end per se because we've kind of reached the end of its evolution. I'm going to be talking today about upgrading. So how do you become a captain at a regional airline or even at a major airline? I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and Tommy's going to finish up cardiology, which is towards the end of the EMT certification. And then next week when we have our next show, it'll be a different segment. We have a couple ideas. We just got to decide on how we want to do it moving forward. But unfortunately, this will be the last career corner segment for the show because it's did what it's supposed to. It's lived out its entirety. We've talked about how to become a EMT or medical professional and a professional pilot from step one, from zero to hero, over the past 16 episodes. So if you're sitting here and you're new to the show and you're like, I want to know how to become an airline pilot, or I want to know how to become an EMT or medical professional, you're going to want to go back to all episode number one, and usually around the 45-minute mark is when we do it.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the 45-minute mark, and we talk about step by step, starting from zero to hero, how to be professionals in our career. So definitely go check that out. But I will start off. I will, because mine's going to be short and sweet. And we're talking about how to upgrade to captain. So captain is the person you see in the left seat of an aircraft with the 4 stripes on their shoulder. They are what we call the pilot in command. They are basically ultimately in charge for the final decision and the safety of the passengers and crew aboard an aircraft. They have the final say, other than like the CEO of the company. But when it comes down to operation of the aircraft, they have final say, period. I, as a first officer, will provide as much information to the captain, and assist him or her as much as I can in order to help them make a safe decision. And my job also as a first officer is to, in the sake of safety, is to object, or not really object, but to bring counterpoints to a decision that I think may not be unsafe. But ultimately, the captain has the final say in how the aircraft is operated. It sounds like a lot of pressure, and it is a lot of pressure. So I first upgraded back in 2018 at Envoy as a first officer. I was only a first officer for a year. I got my 1,000 hours in a year, which leads me to the first part. So there's 2 things that you need to have, or technically 3 things to be a captain. You need to have seniority. So you need to be at the company long enough where your seniority would allow you to hold the position of captain. If you're too junior, then you won't be able to hold it. The second thing you need is a minimum of 1,000 hours SIC time, or second in command time, and that's per the FAA. That's an actual FAA regulation. Now, the third one is there's always, generally speaking, a company imposed limit. So, for example, my current company requires those 2 things, seniority and the 1,000 hours SIC, and well, they actually just changed it, but it used to be 500 hours second in command with my current company. Most companies have that, so they know that you are used to company operations before you upgrade into the left seat. Now, and that's what it's called, is upgrading. You're moving to the left seat. Now, the way it works is you put in your bid for your aircraft, base, and captain. So for me, my first upgrade was on the Embraer 145 in New York. So I was based in LaGuardia and JFK for about 4 months initially. I got the award, and then shortly after, I went to captain upgrade, which is basically the same training you would for a type rating, but they add in the duties and responsibilities of being a captain. So you go over the manual, you go over the legal stuff, you go all the gotchas, and that's really what a captain is. The flying is the same, but you are the leader, and you have to make those command decisions while you're flying. And trust me, some of those decisions can be hard. I have stories for days, especially my first 100 hours as a captain. Those were chaotic. But you learn as you go. So once again, seniority. You need to have the FAA minimum 1,000 hours SIC and unrestricted ATP, forgot to mention that, and whatever the company minimums are, and then you upgrade to the left seat. And like I said, you're the boss. You're in charge. You're the leader, and you basically, if something's not right or you need something done, they listen to you. You're the captain. I am currently a first officer waiting to upgrade. The biggest thing for me is that since I commute to work, I need to hold a line or a regular schedule of flying. I don't want to commute to reserve. But when I was at Envoy, I upgraded in 2018 to the 145, and I was a check pilot on the 145, so I instructed people on how to fly the 145. And then during the pandemic, for quality of life reasons, I transitioned as a captain to the Embraer 175. So these airplanes behind me, I was a first officer on this airplane, check pilot, and captain on the Embraer 145. I transitioned as a captain on the ERJ 175, and now I'm a first officer on the Boeing 737. So and that's pretty much when you get to the airlines, that's the promotion, I guess. That's all you're really doing is just moving up that one step. It's not like your initial training where it was a ton of like different ratings and type ratings. It's just you're working towards the upgrade. And in terms of Career Corner, that's it. because especially at the regional level, when you get your captain status, then you can start logging pilot and command time, which is turbine 121 time, which looks good towards your application for a major U.S. airline or wherever you want to go, whether it be Frontier, Southwest, JetBlue, Spirit, or one of the big three. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Tommy. His might be a little more in depth because he's talking about cardiology, but I'm going to be handing it off to Tommy here for the final training you need to be certified as an EMT. Go ahead, Tommy.
Thanks, Bill. So, week 16, you guys made it through the EMT course with the last major module of cardiology. The last 2 weeks, cardiology is actually a 3-week module because months back I had made the analogy of those of us who remember carburetors and the newer generation with throttle bodies. The heart is basically the carburetor of the human body. And there's just one of an infinite number of things that could go wrong within the cardiovascular system. And when you say that, it's just not the four chambers of the heart. There's the arteries, the veins, venules, vesicles, all that stuff. And every once in a while, the human body will want to go and take itself out and do silly things. And you got to know what to do to treat that and to counteract things. But we're coming down to the nitty gritty. You're coming down and studying for the division exam in cardiology, which takes you from a heart attack through angina, through the sudden unaliving syndrome, VFib, different rhythms and stuff like that. By this time, there are 5 or 6 basic rhythms that the EMT candidate will recognize. They'll be able to read it on a regular monitor. All the classes that I've taught ever since it was approved by the federal government have been on LifePak monitors with actual screens to where the EMT was looking and interpreting some of their own rhythms, specifically VFib that we spoke about a little bit earlier. But once you pass that division exam, there's only 3 things left to do. Ambulance operations, which differs from state to state and system to system. My initial ambulance ops was in New York City, which far surpassed any of the 2 other states that I worked as an EMT in. But, with that, ambulance operations, it's not something that I'm gonna bring into the final episode of Career Corner. It's just it's specific to where you're taking your EMT class. Everything that I'd given you over the last 16 weeks was based on the national standard and the national training standards for EMTs through the federal DOT. Believe it or not, that's who the regulating body is. But once ambulance operations is out of the way, you have your practical exam, which will be done by state examiners, and that's where you actually, administer oxygen, put a tourniquet on, and all the skills that we've discussed. And then you sit and you take a national registry exam. For those of you who are looking into it, the one thing I will caution about the national registry, it's not truly an EMT knowledge exam. It's a reading comprehension with a backup of uh, anatomy, physiology, treatments, and knowledge of signs and symptoms. But at this point in the class, as we're winding down, as an instructor that's been certified in multiple states, and I can't tell you how many people I'm responsible for instructing. In fact, I live with one of them. That's when I first met my better half. She was an EMT student. Uh, at this point, while we're prepping you for the national registry exam, we're those of you who aren't so confident, I promise you, we're going to go out of our way, even if we need to do one-on-one instruction with you, to make sure you walk in there confident and you walk out with your EMT credentialing. Uh, it's a big milestone, in the beginning of the medical career. Like I've always said, EMT is the entry level into the emergency medical field, and it truly is. And most people go on EMT, paramedic, nurse, PA, doctor, or physician's assistants, rather, doctor, and wherever it goes. Me, I stayed a career EMT because of some of the other really, really cool training I got afterwards. So that's why I stayed towards the more hazmat and tactical responses of stuff, and that's just one of the different career paths. Because people would ask me, "Oh my, you've been around for 25 years. Why are you just an EMT?" Well, Junior, I'm just not just an EMT. I have the certifications to run with a SWAT team. I have certifications to run in, suit up and run into the middle of a sarin gas exposure. There's a lot of things I could do, and For those of you who do it in the future, don't ever, ever let anyone call you just an EMT, especially someone that's a layperson, because the knowledge that you're walking around with, most people that don't know what actually happens on an ambulance, they're kind of surprised to see what your skill level is when you come walking into their living room because they need you. But with that, we're winding down the EMT class, and as instructors, we're with you guys right to the day of your national registry.
And there it is, folks. That is all you need to know in 16 steps, basically, right? Because we
Yeah,
did 16 episodes on how to be a professional in our career fields. I think, I mean, I feel like we've gotten y'all to a point where you can use this information. And hopefully one day, Tommy will maybe see you out there in an ambulance, and maybe I'll be flying with you in the flight deck because that'd be really cool to go from zero to hero, thanks to what you've heard too on this podcast. With that, we will transition to our viewer Q&A. We got a lot of activity today. It makes me super excited when our viewers are interacting in chat here. Hangry Pancakes on our one of our Discord members on TikTok Live. Welcome. And Dell was in there earlier, same with Mason. And old man Gaming 47 says hello, Tommy, from TikTok.
hey, what's up?
Um, and Brickyard as well. I'm trying to find to see any. There were some good comments when we were talking about stuff earlier. If you guys have questions, now the time to ask it because Tom and I will go over them. Wyland Bro, Flying with Caden, also as well. Let's see. And we'll get into this here in a second here. This is from Flying with Caden on Twitch. We were talking about Boeing earlier. He said, in my eyes, I see it as an individual airline practice rather than the manufacturer as a whole. We'll talk a little bit more about that. There's arguments that can be made that says that the lack of safety and costs cutting measures is because of a particular low-cost airline here in the United States. Because they're their biggest buyer of Boeing 737s. But other people would argue that that lies with the manufacturer, regardless of who's buying their airplane. But excellent comment there, Caden on Twitch. Rishi also on Twitch was asking about if we've gone over the 787 incident with the button on the seat causing the captain to get pressed into the yoke. We haven't talked about it yet. I have to do a little more research, but that's something we could talk about next week as well. Let's see if there's anything. Oh, I really love this from Caden. Flight attendants are the only people who are flight attendants are the only people who are doctors, law enforcement all at one time. Yeah, flight attendants do an amazing job. There was another comment in here about how flight attendants from Louis that flight attendants are underestimated, and I always like to remind people that they're there for your safety and primarily their safety. They're going to be the ones saving your lives in an emergency. So, let's see. Do you have any other questions on your side, Tommy? I think all our chat kind of feeds into the same overlay.
Yeah, we're all kind of funneled. Just hello to everybody on my TikTok side. I'm sorry, like we don't interrupt each other. It's been longstanding with the talk show that there's always the viewer comments later on in
Mm-hmm.
the show before the main topic, and then if you put comments in during our main topic conversation, we'll read those and we'll discuss it. But to Caden's point, for years I worked in South Queens, and my ambulance was actually the first new ambulance into Kennedy Airport. There were days during my shift I'd be at Kennedy 3, 4, 5 times. I've lost track of how many aircraft I actually have taken patients off of, and I never ever interviewed the pilot and the first officer.
Nope.
Never. It's always
Nope.
been it. It might not necessarily have been the flight attendant that had direct contact, because it's just the way the aircraft is set up. That flight attendant might be back in the tail of the plane.
Yeah.
So usually EMS will take a report from the flight attendant that's right there at the front doors when we board the aircraft.
Yeah, they're
And
the ones. They're the bosses in the back. If once we kind of get everything squared away, we're focused on flying the airplane safely. They handle everything else in the back. That's why
but
flight attendants are amazing.
and like they've done good jobs. To the credit of the flight attendants, to the credit of the airlines that trained them. Um, like I've taken critical people, like critically sick people off of aircraft, and these flight attendants have been with them an hour and 15. Because naturally a medical emergency is not going to happen when they're on final. They normally wait till they're over the middle of the North Atlantic somewhere.
Well, not always. My past two medical emergencies have been on downwind in O'Hare. So sometimes they happen a
Oh,
little bit
yeah,
closer to the
nice,
airport.
nice.
Yeah, so that's always a fun call. But thank you everybody for your, like we said, we don't ignore your all's comments. Actually, we're looking at them, and while like I'm talking and Tommy is off camera while I'm doing one of the segments, he's responding and vice versa. So we can see your all's comments. We just save mentioning and saying hello until that specific time. So if you do have a question, feel free to put it in there, and that's when we'll get to it. But now onto the meat and potatoes, because we're hitting around that hour mark, which is right on time. We're going to be discussing our weekly discussion topic: safety versus cost. Is it always an inverse relationship? What that means is inverse means as one rises, the other one degrades, and vice versa. So if you spend more money on something, does it necessarily mean it's more safe? Or if you go cheaper and save money on something, does it mean it's unsafe? And that's it. And honestly, I don't know. It's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of discussion topic. I honestly
Yeah.
don't know which one. I think it depends on what industry you're in. So, like for example, in aviation, if you find a way to save money because of like a manufacturing process that required like four people but now can be done with two people and a robot, is that necessarily unsafe? I don't think so, as long as the proper practices and stuff are coming, but you do save money on the two people that you know what I mean? So it's like in that case you're cutting costs, but you're not really jeopardizing the manufacturing process. But in the sense that you're cutting proper safe, like if you're cutting safety protocols to save money so that way you can get aircraft delivered on time, then yeah, then you're cutting costs is not helping with safety. You see what I mean? What do you think, Tommy? It's kind of it's a hard it's a hard discussion because
This
it's
is,
all depends.
and we always seem to get to this point in the show, and it's something that you and I are going to debate for 2 hours after the show is finished.
Yeah.
While we're doing whatever else for the rest of the day. But I don't necessarily believe that the rising cost of labor, parts, and everything that goes into making a part for an aircraft. There's probably a bunch of them that are inverse, but I don't believe all
Yeah.
of them are.
Hmm.
There are companies out there still to this day that maintain that old adage of, we're going to build this, we're going to build it 100% because we know this is going to go in a 787 or this is going to go in a
Hmm.
330 Neo, and we need to do this the best that we can. That mindset is still out there, but every
Hmm.
company needs to save cost as well, and I get that. But where does that go like this?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
and I think also too, like if you're talking about for example, if you fully automate a process that would normally take six people to do with a robot, right? I know it's horrible. I'm not recommending laying off people for robots, but as an example, right? It does the exact same safety protocols and still has the same quality assurance checks at the end. It's just you take out the labor costs in between to do that. That's to me, that's not it's not less safe if you do it that way, right? As long
Right.
as the quality assurance is still in there. Now, if you have to hire a quality assurance person, one of those six people was a quality assurance person that you laid off, but then have to hire another person to minimize the cost, it's still not unsafe. It's just the cost is a little bit different. But let's talk about materials, though, right? Just straight up materials. If you had to choose between something that had like 50-pound tensile strength, and we talked about it in a previous episode, but like
Yeah.
50-pound tensile strength versus 48-pound tensile strength, and the engineering requires 48 pounds, and it costs less to go with the 48-pound one. I personally always love a little fudge factor in there. So I would personally go with the
Mhm.
50-pound tensile strength than the 48. But since the 48 is cheaper and engineering says it needs 48, going with the 48 one because it's cheaper, is that jeopardizing safety even though engineering requires 48 pounds? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
Like,
I don't know if that's necessarily because it's hitting the tensile strength that is required, not
right.
recommended, but required tensile strength, right? And but like you though, I would probably go with the 50 because let's face it, every aircraft in the world, even ones that roll out and they go for their first test and certification and airworthiness flights,
Hmm.
there's stress on the frame.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Hmm.
gentlest and the takeoffs and landings, you're still putting stress on that airframe.
Yep. Hmm.
So why not? I mean, purchasing power, right? Large corporations, when they purchase product in very large quantities, actually pay less because of the amount of product that they're purchasing. Yeah, and you know
Hmm.
how this works. You know,
Yeah.
is there really that significant of a difference that's going to bankrupt a company like Spirit Technologies over 48 or 50 tensile strength?
Yeah, and that's and
You
I
know?
know it's kind of and it's a small example, but that's my point. It's like engineering said 48, or so in that case, it would cost more to be safer because you're going above the engineering recommendation. You're adding a little bit of fudge factor in there.
Mhm.
So I guess that is more expensive, but I don't think it's a causation. I think it's just a correlation, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, I'm
For
with you. I
example,
yep.
so for have you ever heard the ice cream and murder rate example? When ice cream sales go up, the murder rate also goes up. It's not because ice cream causes people to kill, but ice cream rates go up in the summer because it's hotter, but also because it's hotter, people tend to be more short tempered and more frustrated. So that causes more violent crime. So it's a correlation, not a causation. One doesn't cause the other. It's just they happen to go up in the same rate.
Yep, and I see mine
That's
was always, it was always a causation
yeah.
because, like,
So
when
and that's it.
we would get our statistics when I was EMS,
Hmm.
we would always joke and be like, "Oh, everybody's out of control when it's a full moon," that whole full moon theory, but especially in New York City, they actually spent millions of dollars on study because we would see a rise in violent crime from roughly early May to Halloween, give or
Yeah,
take.
but that's and I think that's my point. It's an inverse relationship, but I'm not sure if it's causation, like increased cost increases safety, or if it's lower cost means less safe. I think it's just a correlation. Like when something happens with the Boeing, for example, right? If it's a nut or something like that, they're going to scrutinize everything and be like, well, they went with the cheaper option. So is the cost is I think more of a correlation than a causation. Like it may not have been the reason, or was it called, the cost may not have been directly affected, or the safety may not have been directly affected by the cost, but because something happened to the airplane, it was under extra scrutiny that is being taken into account, right? Because every time you talk about Boeing, all you're hearing is, oh, they're cutting corners, they're not safe, they're cutting corners, right? But like cutting corners is that's I think that's more procedural inspections versus cost. I think a
Yeah,
lot of
that's what
people
I think as well.
associate that a lot of people associate the cost with the safety, and I don't think it's the cost. I think it's the procedures. But here's the thing: are they cutting the procedures to save cost, or are they trying to maintain a delivery target? That's another thing, because if they are trying to save cost by cutting the procedures or the safety inspections, then that is a causation where the savings of the money savings is directly affecting the safety of the aircraft.
Yeah, especially
So
you slap that deadline on it. Contractually, they owe um, airline ABC 4 737 8 Maxes by the 5th of May. Here we are, the 11th of April. That's not a lot of time to get an aircraft prepped for
yeah,
delivery.
so I think it falls under this discussion falls under my standard saying it depends.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it largely depends. I think with Boeing, and this is what mainly brought up this discussion why I want to talk about it, is because Boeing's been in the news uh, because of the safety incidents that have occurred, and a lot of things are being brought up with the safety aspect of the Boeing 737 and now the 787. And I think the arguments out there is there cost saving measures? Is Boeing having financial troubles? Is it airlines trying to pressure Boeing to keep the cost down? Otherwise, they're not going to buy for them. Or are they just trying to make delivery dates and cut corners because they're making delivery dates? So
mhm.
that's something that I'm just interested to see from Boeing as we go on and kind of keep monitoring the situation on the Torque and Thrust Talk show.
Oh
But
yeah,
I
this
think,
this is gonna be ongoing for months.
yeah, but I think we've our conclusion, because generally speaking, Tommy and I like to come to a conclusion like, is Nightmare Before Christmas a Christmas or Halloween movie? I think we're coming to the conclusion that it just depends. Honestly, it depends on the company and the scenario. And Lando says that I can confirm on TikTok. It says Boeing is working on a culture change, so it might be culture too.
Yep.
So And before we sign off, Caden on Twitch asked another really good question, and after we kind of transition, so I want to make sure that I answer it here. He said, "Bill, at what point do flight attendants contact you when something goes wrong? Like, what scale of emergency?" We always keep each other in the loop. Communication, you probably hear it all the time. Communication is key, especially in aviation. Even the smallest things we are made aware of. Same thing with them. It's a constant communication between us and the back. Whether it's something as simple as, "Hey, it's a little cool in the back. Can you warm it up?" That's usually the first officer's job, versus an emergency. If there's even the tidbits of a possible, like for example, we were talking about medical emergency, once they got enough information to relay to us, they'll let us know, because from that point, there's a lot of evaluating with physicians on the ground through us and to the flight attendants before we actually declare a medical emergency. But once there's like something going on that's abnormal, usually we immediately notify one another to make them aware. We'll usually start off be like, "Hey, it's not an emergency yet, but this is what's going on. We'll get back to you." The trigger point is just anything abnormal. Is generally speaking when we communicate to one another something's going sideways. All right. Well, with that, folks, we are going to be wrapping up our return from hiatus episode number 16, expensive safety. And we do thank you all for joining us, and hope you guys enjoyed, or you all enjoyed, the talk show. If you do want to stay up to date with the show and industry news, follow us on Twitter at Torque, the letter N, Thrust Talk Show, Torque in Thrust Talk Show. I'll go ahead and put this up here on there for you guys to scan. There we do daily reposts of news, anything that's new with the actual podcast goes up there, and we also stream on there too. So if you don't have access to Twitch, you don't have access to YouTube, Kick, or TikTok Live at the time, we're also live on Twitter every time we go live on here. If you'd like to save the show for on-the-go entertainment, follow and turn on notifications for the talk show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. We're all on 3 platforms, so if you'd missed the show, the live show, it'll be audio. The audio format or version will be available on those 3 platforms. Feel free to follow me on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok, as well as Tommy D. I'm at Captain Bill Official. Tommy D. Here, let me do this real quick so we can get our things up here. I'll hide this for a second.
And you're welcome, Ashley. Ashley's not on Twitch at all, so with everything else, she just commented, "Thank you."
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. So there we go. We have our handles down below there, at Level Flight Simulations and at Captain Bill Official. Tommy and I are going to be streaming a little bit later today. We're going to be doing some gaming on Twitch. So make sure you go check it out. I just became a Twitch affiliate today. Woohoo! And we're working on getting Tommy to that level as well.
Yeah,
So feel
we
free
actually
to
have
come.
a comedy show lined up.
We do. What are we playing? Did we decide? Or are we doing Call of Duty? All right, we'll be doing a Call of Duty on Twitch, so definitely come check that out and support Tommy as well. We'll be doing that probably in about an hour, and so after we get something to eat.
But
with
we
that,
got to send a message to England to make sure they're ready to go.
Oh yeah, because of snow. I almost said snowy because of sunny there. But next show will be next week on April. I believe I put it down as April 18th. So
The
next
18th,
Thursday, at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern. So with that, on behalf of the Torque and Thrust Talk Show, I am Bill.
I am Tommy.
And we will see you all next week.
Take care, everybody.